Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, and our mission is to bring you the real news each and every week. And we do that by releasing a lot of content. We have local stories told through the eyes of our field messengers. We have more in-depth news that the team and I work on for you guys each week, where we take you behind the headlines and give you more of an explanation as to why you're seeing some of the stories out there. We talk about the restoration of our planet, and we have updates from the Global Intelligence Agency on what's really happening here on our planet in the ultimate battle of good versus evil, which is what you are seeing play out here. Doesn't matter where you're at in the world. If you want more information about United Network News, who we are, what we do, you can visit our website at unitednetwork.earth. This podcast that you found here, this is a week in review show, so I go through the stories that we have talked about over the last week, and it's a great way to catch up on anything you may have missed, or if you would like to share UNN with other people, this is a great way to do it, because when we first release our content, it is available exclusively to our members, our paid members, for the first week. And then we do push it out on YouTube and Rumble, but you know how those sites are. You never know if stuff's going to stay up there, or, my favorite is when they try to take something we make public and on the back end they make it private so people can't see it unless you're subscribed to it. They have all sorts of tricks up their sleeves, but we're on to them. And of course, the best way, if you want to get the content right away, is to become a member, and there's more information about that on our website. With any information you're consuming nowadays, please think critically about the information. Ask yourself questions. Does this make sense? Does this line up? Is there a narrative behind this? What money is behind this, right? Connect the dots. Keep asking questions. I always say question everything. And when you figure some stuff out, share it with other people you know. That's why we created this podcast. We are sharing with you guys the information we're discovering, because this is how we change the world. And we really believe that we are living in a time now where change is not only possible, but inevitable. Now, speaking of change, some announcements I have for you guys is that on our app, if you happen to be a member, or if you're even doing a free trial with us, you will see that the chats have changed. So if you go to our website, in the main navigation, there's a section for chat. If you click on that, if you are, like I said, a member, or you're doing a trial run with us, that's awesome. You will be taken to our chat room. And we've organized things a little bit differently. And there's some really cool things. We've cleaned it up a little bit, because some of the chats, to be honest, we really weren't using as effectively as we could have. And some of them were just a little outdated. When we first launched the platform, we thought we were going to do certain things, but then things took a different turn, right? And so we needed to clean that up, which we did this last week. Kim went in there and made it all nice and purty. And so actually the GIA, there's some real exciting stuff that's happening, I think, with the GIA. I started to tell you guys a little bit about that in last week's rundown episode. We are working on a landing page that helps people basically connect some of the dots so they can watch a video of Kim's for the GIA and kind of, they're not going to know everything, but we felt like we really needed an introduction to who the GIA is, who's behind the GIA, and some of the core things about what's happening on our planet right now for the things that Kim talks about to really make sense. And so we're working on that. I let you guys know that last week. And these chats, I feel, really go hand in hand with that, because we have a special chat that is for the GIA. And Kim has been posting in there. She has a few hours dedicated to that each week, where she's written it in her calendar, and she's going to go in there and she's going to post some notes. And, this week she posted a really cool image of what an industrial city looks like. We talked about that last week. So she's going to be posting some things here and there. And she's also going to be answering questions, which I'll tell you more about when we get to her sound bites, because she did release a very interesting report this week, and we've got some sound bites to play a little bit later on. So those are the announcements I have. Let's get to the stories. Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. Okay, kicking things off with our awesome field messengers because we believe this is how we're going to change the face of news, through our field messengers. They are everyday people just like you, and they're reporting on things that are happening in their community. Imagine if we had thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people around the world that are just sharing what's going on in their communities. I mean, how quickly, people talk about wanting the mainstream media to go away. Well, this is how we do it, guys. It's not that we have to take down mainstream media because they're shooting themselves in the foot every day. They're just telling lies after lies after lies, and more people are seeing through those lies. What we have to do is provide an alternative, and that's us. That's on us to tell the stories from our communities, good, bad, and otherwise. Maybe there's something that we need to fix in our communities. Maybe we're celebrating just our heritage and the, fun traditions and things that happen in different countries. That's what makes every country just, a little bit different and special. I'm recording this on July 4th, which allegedly is America's birthday. I'm not so sure about that, but that's the day we celebrate it. And especially this year, they're making a big deal out of our 250th birthday, again, allegedly. And I think all countries should be proud of themselves. We should be able to, of course, freely travel and visit each other and celebrate just the uniqueness of each country. I really do believe that that's something special. But no country should feel bad about themselves. Yeah, we all have really crappy governments and really crappy people that have been leading us in the past, but that's not the people. The people, we're what's going to change the world. We don't need all the other nonsense going on, and it's going to fall apart on its own, and we're going to be here to pick up the pieces and create something absolutely beautiful. And it really does begin with our field messengers to show us what's unique and beautiful about everywhere we live. Because we've been told so many lies about, this country, this is what this country is like, and these people are like this. I feel like anytime I travel, I should apologize for being an American, from the United States or whatever. I don't, because I'm not my government, and none of you should feel guilty about whatever country you come from. We should all have that sense of pride. And it's just beautiful to see the reports come in because it feels like you do have a sense of pride, and we love seeing that, and we should all celebrate our own countries. It's a beautiful thing. All right, let's kick things off with our first field messenger report. Comes from Tony out of Italy, and she takes us to a winery in Tuscany. It's a Chianti winery, and we see how grapes are turned into Chianti wine, how they're bottled up for sale. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is unique to her area of the world. And I don't have that going on in my backyard. I'm traveling right now, but right now I live in California. Not there right now, but that's where I live. And we've got wineries and stuff, but we're not in Tuscany, Italy. How cool is it to see how wine is made there? And Tony takes us through the entire fermentation process, the aging process, final packaging for distribution. She did say that there are some distribution issues going on right now because of all the stuff going on with oil, but that's to be expected. Oh, I also have a little bit of trivia for you guys. And thank you to Tony for sharing this in her report. Sometimes they put roses at the end of the vines for, when they're making wine, right? The vines that the grapes grow on. And do you know why they do that? They do that because if there's any sickness with the vines themselves, the rose bushes will actually show and basically reveal that sickness before it impacts and basically gets to the vines. And so it's an early way to be able to predict if your vines are healthy or not. So if you ever see a rose bush at the start of a vine, that's what it's for. And obviously it makes beautiful roses. All right, Amy out of New Jersey shows us how Prime Air works in Troy, Michigan. So you guys know what Amazon is, and Prime Air is their drone delivery service. And there's a guy that was having a first-time delivery, and she documents his experience. Of course, they promise, it's going to get to your house super fast. And I guess There is a limit. Of course, there's a limit on how much the package can weigh. I think she said it was around 5 pounds or less, which most of their packages are 5 pounds or less. I thought that was interesting. And they use these automated drones, and they operate within selected pilot zones. So she just kind of showed us the whole process and some of the issues that they're having. Sometimes they accidentally drop stuff on dogs and whatever. So, yeah, some things to work through. But this guy was pretty excited about getting a drone delivery, I have to say. Sharif from Uganda talks about youth in his country and how sometimes it's a difficult job market. I think we're kind of experiencing that throughout the world. And there are a group of youth that are promoting loans and as a job. And he interviewed them to learn more about the challenges they face, because apparently these loans and working in this way is pretty popular. Most people, according to this person that he was interviewing, that is what they're doing to make money. And it's based off commission. So obviously could be some potential issues there. But again, we're just learning what other cultures are doing and how things can improve for the job market and beyond. Oh, I love this story. So Irene out of New York, the state of New York, well, she shows us this duck library. So I don't know if you've ever seen those book libraries. We have them here in the States where it's like a little tiny boxy looking thing on a pole. And there's a little door in the front, and it's kind of like give a book, take a book. And they usually call them community libraries or something like that. Well, this rubber duck library is kind of a fun version of that a little bit. So you open up this little thing, I don't know. It looks a little bit smaller than a community library, right? But you open this up and there's all these little ducks in there. Like they look like little rubber ducks. And you can exchange a duck for a duck. And it kind of sounds silly as I'm explaining this, but it's this whole idea of promoting trust and honesty and this neighborhood connection that you feel, right? Because this could be applied to anything. Right now we're trading ducks, and it's just kind of a cute, fun thing. But we've done stories about refrigerators being set out in towns. And if you have a surplus of some type of food, maybe you're growing something, then you go and put, whatever you have left over in a community fridge. And it's a trust system, right? So if you need something, you go to the community fridge and you get whatever you need, but you don't take it all. It's this new system of living where we're sharing, and it's not based on money. It's just based on what people need and what people have. And so I love this duck library because I feel like it is an extension of that. It's almost like preparing us for this next step of how we're going to be living, because these control structures are falling apart, and that means it's time for us to step up and take care of each other. All right, Kenji out of Japan takes us to this beautiful island. It is home to one of Japan's most famous scenic spots. It is a breathtaking shrine, and it appears to kind of float on the water during high tide. It's bright red, and it's a huge tourist attraction. But then when the tide is low, you can actually walk out and physically touch it. So it's no longer in the water, but it's kind of a unique thing, right? Sometimes it's in the water, sometimes it's not. Obviously, if there's water all around it, you can't just walk out to it. It's more of a platform to get to it. So it's just a very unique spot in Japan, and we got to see it up close and personal. Ogwombo Abasi from Nigeria takes us to a farm that specializes in snail farming, honey production, and the cultivation of rice and cassava. And he was there to explore potential partnership opportunities, also just to learn more about the farm and some of the challenges it faces. But they did have mills. I think these mills were mainly inside for processing. And he said that some parts of the mills weren't able to work right now, and that was due to diesel issues. But this farm, I think he said more than 200 workers are typically at this farm. So we're just learning how other people are growing different things, producing honey, snail farming, rice, cassava, all these things really important in Nigeria. And they're making it happen. Sylvita out of Belgium takes us to an event. It's called the Get Together event. It's a holistic well-being event in Belgium. And it's a gathering. And I think she interviewed perhaps the founders of them. I think it started with these two ladies. And they were just talking about, hey, it started with like 10 people. And then we got 12 people, 14 people. And it just grew and grew. It's all about healing and finding different things that can help you on your journey, especially if you are looking for different healing modalities, different ways of dealing with nutrition, things like that. But it's where people can gather, share their experiences, and explore new ways of living. Looked like a fun event. Amy, with the help of Mayuki and Akira, visited the Mazda and Miata's event. This was in New Jersey, and it was a car show, right? So there were Mazda enthusiasts, open road Mazda of Morristown. They hosted a community event to support their local food pantry. Of course, a lot of people showed up. There's a lot of car people. I think we've talked about this recently, right? We had another car related story, and I said, I'm not necessarily a car person. My mom is a big car enthusiast. She just loves cars. I did not get the car gene, but I always loved the Mazda Miatas. My first car, this is dating myself a tad bit, depending on how old you are. My first car was a Honda Del Sol. If you guys remember what those look like, I don't even think they make them anymore, but kind of cool because Del Sol of the sun. My name's Sunny. So anyways, a 2-seater car, and it always got compared to a Miata. It wasn't a Miata, but the Miata was kind of similar 2-seater type thing. And I always thought Miatas were cute little cars. Not as cute as my Del Sol. But I had this cute little red Del Sol that I would bebop around town with. And it was like a hardtop convertible. So I don't know. I felt like that protected me more. Probably not, but way back in the day. And so now anytime I see anything having to do with Miatas, it takes me back to my first car, even though my first car was not a Miata. Still, really nice. And obviously, they have a lot of car enthusiasts, and we got to see a little bit of their excitement and how they like to celebrate their cars. And our final story is from Monica, and she is out of Romania. She goes inside a submarine from 1959. It's been transformed into one of Bulgaria's most popular museums. There was even an area for torpedoes where torpedoes were stored on this submarine. And, I've been in, was it actually a submarine? I'm trying to think. I was on I almost said cruise ship, not a cruise ship. I was on a Navy ship, not when it was out at sea, but as you guys know, I live in San Diego right now. And they had they turned it into a museum too. And I can't remember which ship it is, but it's like at port. And my husband and I went and checked it out. It's very interesting. My husband was a Marine. I guess once a Marine, always a Marine. Isn't that what they say? But he was on a ship for over 6 months as a Marine. And when we did this tour in San Diego, I was just like, oh my gosh, how did you guys sleep in these quarters? I mean, it's like so cramped, and you feel like everything is a dial with a lever or something. You feel like you're living in a steel, I don't know, metal casket of sorts. And it's like very technical and just not very comfortable, It kind of makes you wonder how these people live on these ships for as long as they do. This particular one that Monica was telling us about was a submarine that could operate for about 2 months at sea and usually had about 60 crew members on it. But if you think about it, you're underwater and the recycled air and everything. Ooh, I don't know if I could do that, I don't usually have an issue with tight spaces, but I think after 2 months, I think I might be going crazy. Now it's time for some of the stories that the team and I worked on for you guys this week, the news team. And we're going to kick things off in Zimbabwe. So hundreds of women in rural Zimbabwe who have used electric tricycles to earn a living are facing an uncertain future as police crack down on the vehicles under existing traffic laws. The tricycles have helped women transport crops, supplies, and people while providing reliable income and greater financial independence.
We are providing rural communities with affordable transport solutions, especially to women. Most of the women spend countless hours trying to reach the markets, the hospitals, and also water sources. So the tricycle has just improved the last mile mobility.
But operators are now being fined or having their vehicles confiscated because they cannot afford the licensing and registration costs. Supporters are urging the government to update outdated regulations so these low-speed electric vehicles can continue providing economic opportunities for rural communities. As hotter summers become more common in the UK, the lack of air conditioning in most homes is raising concerns about comfort, health, and the country's energy future. Many British homes were built to retain heat during cold winters, and newer buildings often rely on insulation and ventilation instead of air conditioning, which can fall short during prolonged heat waves.
Why don't most newly built homes and buildings have air conditioning either? Surely by now they know temperatures are rising. There are two main reasons. First, regulations. Air conditioning has effectively been discouraged by government policy for years. In many new developments, it's almost banned. Developers have to prove they've exhausted every passive cooling option first, like planting trees, adding shading, or designing buildings for natural airflow. That's also why London planners push hard for dual aspect flats, homes with windows on two sides, so air can flow through the building and carry heat out naturally.
While expanding air conditioning could help people stay cool, experts warn it could also increase electricity demand and place new pressure on an energy grid already designed to handle peak winter heating loads. As more people take a closer look at what's inside their food, bread is drawing renewed attention for the way it's grown and made. Modern wheat has been bred for higher yields, and many commercial loaves contain additives that improve shelf life and texture, but have raised health concerns among some consumers.
Studies from the University of Kansas found that modern wheat triggers significantly higher immune responses than heritage varieties. Your body recognizes it as a foreign invader, and it responds with inflammation, not because you're sensitive, because the wheat has been engineered into something your digestive system doesn't recognize as food. Then there's the milling. Medieval flour was stone ground, a slow process that kept the wheat kernel intact. The bran, the germ, the endosperm, all ground together. That meant fiber, healthy fats, B vitamins, minerals like magnesium and zinc, all still present. Modern roller milling, introduced in the 1870s, strips all of that away. It removes the bran and the germ because they contain oils that go rancid, shortening shelf life. What's left is pure white endosperm, basically pure starch and a damaged protein structure.
While experts continue to debate the causes of digestive issues linked to bread, many people are choosing organic, sourdough, or ancient grain varieties and looking for products with simpler ingredient lists. Rising housing costs and a competitive rental market are leading more single mothers in Australia to share homes as a way to reduce expenses and build stronger support networks. These shared households help families split costs, share childcare responsibilities, and create greater stability during financial hardship or after separation.
I was going between sort of crisis accommodation with my daughter as well as staying with friends in the area, sleeping on the couch for months at a time. All I've ever wanted is for my daughter to have the best life I can possibly give her. So it did feel like I was failing.
Do you think it's a matter of just simply not getting a fair look in as a single mother?
Yes, I do.
Similar mommune, which is a combination of mom and commune or community, living arrangements are also becoming more common in countries like the United States, Canada, the UK, and New Zealand, as single mothers work together to make housing more affordable and recreate the sense of community many families need. Agritourism helps family farms generate extra income by inviting visitors to experience life on working farms through activities such as tours, harvest festivals, farmers markets, and farm-to-table events.
The most creative thinkers are going to the farm, not cafes, not co-working spaces, farms. Because if you're trying to think, like really think, you need silence. I recently heard about a screenwriter who spent 10 days at an agriturismo just to collect his thoughts for a new series. Farm hotel as a retreat for deep work, fresh meals, walking paths, swimming, yoga outside, everything handled so you can disappear into your own mind. And now some places are being built for this. In the UK, Restari's launched a work from farm offer after hearing how guests were more productive there than at home. In Portugal, a former tech founder is building Retreat for Burnout, 100 acres private cabins, shared meals grown on the land. The entire goal is to help people enter a flow state for deep work. No schedules to manage, no choices to make, and in some cases, no talking.
As farmers face rising costs, unpredictable weather, and shrinking profits, these experiences provide an important financial boost while helping people better understand where their food comes from. Beyond supporting farms, agritourism also benefits local businesses and strengthens connections between rural communities and the people they feed. Many everyday personal care products contain synthetic chemicals that researchers are studying for possible links to hormone disruption, skin irritation, fertility issues, and other health concerns, especially with long-term repeated exposure.
We need to call out one of the industry's most deceptive tactics, which is greenwashing. And it's not just misleading, it's psychological manipulation of the worst kind. It preys on your good intentions of avoiding unnecessary chemical exposure. Brands use words like all natural, eco-friendly, non-toxic, with earthy tones and minimalist fonts to make you feel like, hey, you're doing the right thing, in hopes that you will let your guard down. But never take it at face value. Always flip over the bottle, and the ingredient label often tells a different story, which is the actual truth.
Critics argue that U.S. cosmetic regulations are far less restrictive than those in Europe, leaving manufacturers with greater responsibility for determining ingredient safety. As a result, consumers are increasingly encouraged to read labels carefully, look beyond marketing claims, and make informed choices about the products they use every day. Some frozen treats that look like ice cream are actually labeled frozen dairy desserts. You got to look for that on the packaging, a distinction based on FDA standards for ingredients such as milk fat. These products often contain stabilizers, emulsifiers, and other additives that help them hold their shape and melt more slowly, fueling viral videos and consumer curiosity.
Around 2000s to 2010s, Breyers changed many of the recipes to use less cream. They added more air, included more gums and stabilizers, poison. This made the product cheaper to produce. Of course, it's always about money. But it also meant it no longer met the FDA requirements to legally be called ice cream. So they changed it to frozen dairy dessert.
While these ingredients are approved for use, experts say reading labels can help shoppers better understand what they're buying and choose products that match their preferences and dietary needs. Decades of intensive farming have helped increase food production, but they've also contributed to soil degradation, biodiversity loss, and greater reliance on synthetic fertilizers and pesticides.
Mega corporations and their friends in the mass media want us to believe that toxic industrial monoculture is the most scientific and efficient way to farm. Here are 3 science-based reasons as to why that is simply not true. Number 1 is that these chemically laden mega farms are incredibly energy inefficient. Growing food crops this way consumes 3 energy calories for every 1 food calorie produced. Reason number 2 is that plantings of a single crop do not efficiently utilize sunlight, space, or available nutrients. Reason number 3 is that it decimates soil health over time. Progressively poorer soil means progressively less healthy crops.
Researchers say healthy soil plays an important role in supporting crop nutrition, water retention, and long-term agricultural resilience, leading many to promote regenerative practices such as crop rotation, cover cropping, and reduced tillage. While these approaches show promise, many farmers face financial and practical challenges in adopting them, highlighting the need to balance high food production with protecting the land for future generations. Millions of people around the world live with preventable or treatable vision problems because eye exams and prescription glasses remain too expensive or inaccessible. And all this comes down to how the system is set up.
One company owns all of it. Luxottica owns Ray-Ban, Oakley, Versace, Prada, and loads more. And then they merged with Essilor, the largest lens manufacturer in the world. So the same company makes your frames, makes your lenses, and then sells them back to you through their own retail stores. That means there's no real competition, and they set the prices. So a pair of glasses that costs $4 to make, they'll sell that for $400 and make 1,000% markup. And most opticians are still buying from them, so there's no escape.
Poor vision can affect education, employment, independence, and overall quality of life, particularly in lower-income communities where access to eye care is limited. Organizations around the world are working to close that gap by providing affordable eye exams and glasses, highlighting the importance of clear vision as a basic public health need rather than a luxury. All right, now it's time for some updates from the Global Intelligence Agency. Kim Gogan is the head of the GIA. Now, at the start of this episode, I was telling you guys we've made a bunch of changes to our chat room. And one of the big changes, as I mentioned, is a whole section focused on the GIA. I would encourage you guys, if you're not members, sign up for a free trial, check that out. And if you are members, this is a great place and the primary place where you will find any information for the GIA. So we're still using Telegram, but that is not our primary place that we're going to be posting information anymore. This is the chat. This is where Kim's going to be engaging with a lot of you, because we used to have a section called Connect with Kim, and that was based on a segment that we had on the news prior to us making a bunch of changes to our news format. And we originally thought that was going to carry over into the chats, and Kim has been really busy and, she wants to answer your questions, and, we're trying to find a good system for this. And so what we've landed on is this. In the GIA chat, so not where you would just watch the video, like in the catalog section, I think on our website it's called videos. So not in the comments for the video, but if you go into the chat section, now that's an important distinction because I think people were posting questions under just the video. Don't do that. Go into the chat section, look for GIA, and we will pin, I think we're pinning the latest video. Kim, as I said earlier, is devoting 3 hours a week. So in 1 hour increments, 3 times a week, she's going to be going in there. She's going to be answering questions. She's going to be posting information. And this is a great way for you guys to ask questions on the latest GIA video. If you're asking questions on videos, 2 videos ago, 3 videos ago, you can ask questions and maybe someone will answer it, but it won't be Kim, because we have to have a way for her to be able to see the most recent questions, answer them, and then move on. It would be impossible for her just to continuously answer questions on previous videos, okay? So take advantage of this. This is a great opportunity because she's devoting time to this, and I know a lot of you guys have questions when the GIA report comes out. We are working on that in multiple ways, but this is kind of the first step to give you guys more access to Kim and to help clarify anything that she's saying on the reports. Okay, so let's get to the video that she released this last week and talk about what the deep state is doing. We've got a few different sound bites on things that happened throughout the week because we like to tell you what's going on behind the headlines and what you're seeing. And it's solstice time. It's hard for me to even say the word because it's not really even in my vocabulary. Like, it's like, okay, it's summer, it's winter, it's whatever. But, and I appreciate the seasons. That's how I would refer to it. But the deep state likes the solstice time because this used to be a time of change for them when their little demonic buddies would come and, perform all fun, types of fun things for them, where money would come for them, how their whole system worked really evolved around solstices, new moons, any kind of planetary alignments. That's all the deep state's thing. And so it is summer solstice time, and they were doing a lot of strange rituals involving places like Stonehenge. You may have heard something about J.D. Vance, who is the vice president in the U.S., taking a trip to Switzerland. That was all focused on trying to get power back and, being involved in these silly rituals because they know exactly what they're doing. This is all about power. This is a huge power grab right now, and they don't really care who they're doing rituals to make it happen. And now we're getting to the bottom of the line. So these are the people that you're actually, seeing on TV. They're the ones that are doing some of the stuff behind the scenes. The first soundbite that I want to play for you guys is about Venezuela because they had some earthquakes, some really big earthquakes that I'm sure you heard about on the 24th of June. Now, this actually kind of rings on a personal note for me. Our good friends who are neighbors of ours are originally from Venezuela. And I guess their family is okay, but they were telling us that their communities are just in shambles. And it's so heartbreaking. And I think they may have actually had some distant cousins that were injured or even killed in these earthquakes. So it's a very real thing that's going on. And it surrounded the Ring of Fire. You may have heard Kim talk about the Ring of Fire before. So here's the soundbite from Kim talking about what's really going on and what happened with those earthquakes and the cause of all that chaos.
Earthquakes in Venezuela. On the 24th of June, there were not only earthquakes in Venezuela, but there were also earthquakes around the entire Ring of Fire, all on that particular Wednesday. The source of the earthquakes in Venezuela was tied to Lake Maracaibo. I hope I'm saying that correctly for you in Latin America, so sorry if I am not. Lake Maracaibo, I think we've got a map picture of that here. Lake Maracaibo is actually a lake that's right off of the ocean, and it's kind of just below the Gulf of America, apparently. And this lake is, well, let's just say the deep state had a good idea and a computer to help them try to install some very dark frequencies that would change the very fabric of reality. As we start to get reality coming into this world, they felt that they would be able to fill a barren, dry land under this lake with this new, what I refer to as kind of like a quantum water. And they would be able to utilize that fabric of reality to control, the world. It sounds like Pinky and the Brain, if you've never seen that cartoon. But those vibrations that were occurring coming from there, and also a large area of New Mexico and Mexico, are what caused the earthquakes in Venezuela, as they attempted to make a redirect of all things water. So they'd like to convert this water that would be coming in during a time like this to what we call black water, no relation to the crazy military people or whatever they call themselves these days. So essentially, frequencies there caused by this. Now, the second round of earthquakes was tied to an area underneath the entire Ring of Fire and an artificial network that we call the SUN network. You could call it a symphony network, which is more likened to a Satan network, really. And it is where the home of the artificial SUN, and you can even say the artificial SON, not too far from SOB. No, I'm just kidding, really. So this network here was present under the entire Ring of Fire. If you follow the internet, you probably have seen some talks around the time that this occurred, because they were reporting extremely high radio frequencies on that particular day in the evening. They were also reporting these high radio frequencies in states like California and some of the western seaboard of the United States, as well as the eastern seaboards of China, in areas like this, and of course the island states over there. So the entire network there in the Ring of Fire is what you would call, from our standpoint, an artificial sun or an artificial soul or being. The being of your person is not, it is made, it's basically what some people in the New Age world, I guess, would call it your etherical body. It is made of etherium. It is part of your soul. It comes after the soul. It is the place where the doing begins. And nothing in this world was held sacred. The one thing that this kingdom wanted to do, or the false kingdom wanted to do, or false realities, was to divide you into multiple pieces so that the pieces of you could not communicate with each other, and definitely not with Source. For those of you that have been following for a while, you have heard us talk about the giant gold ballast that has been under Yellowstone Park for a very long time. We knew at that time, when we first discovered it, that it was basically like some form of a giant nuclear type reactor. Now, it didn't function on nuclear energy. It functioned on etherium and beings. So essentially, you could say that the quote-unquote false heaven, for lack of a better term, is under Yellowstone Park. The reason why we went to the recycling bin, also known as the Inferno in some cases, is in part due to this giant reactor, which was then utilized for an energy source in order to create artificial suns, artificial stars, artificial galaxies, and artificial constellations, and overlay on the soul of every galaxy in the omniverse. So when they say Lucy is the light bringer, well, not exactly. Maybe he was at one point before the fall, but essentially he had to recreate everything once he was disconnected from Source to create these SUN and STAR networks, as well as separation of your being. So once a being would enter in the past, this giant reactor, the divine plan is then separated from the being based on this particle explosion. It's not fission, it's not fusion. I don't think we have a term that you would grab in our quantum physics to explain the process. But essentially, the blowing apart of Source into varying aspects happens when any being of source is also blown apart. So given the fact that most of our beings ended up in this giant reactor, so to speak, this is where the separation actually begins for the being. The divine heart, the paracausal, the connection to source, is separated from the, let's call it the divine plan. The divine plan is also separated from the consciousness. The consciousness is separated from the being and separated from the soul. The energy is then extracted and causes this reaction to occur, which then completes the separation. So when a new being would come into this existence that we know, that being came in separated. So we never really get to feel fully whole, and we never really establish a proper connection with source other than what they permitted us, or what Lucy permitted us to have for quite a long time. This structure is also used to create artificial stars and suns, which then causes things like solar flares, and it also causes a separation of your central sun with all other, or soul, with all other souls, not only the soul of the planet that is your host, but also the soul of your galaxy, which is the sun in which all of the planets in every single respective galaxy revolve around. Because of the separation of any being, because Source also at one point was separated, Earth also was separated. This giant ball in ballast was set to replace that particular being and all of the beings that she hosts. Directly in the center of this ballast is what looks to be, I would say, similar to the rings of Saturn, except it goes straight through the middle of the being, or the central sun of the being, specifically in this case of Earth. The reason why it was important for Lucifer, in case you don't know who we're talking about, to do this is because Earth is known as a nexus planet. She was actually the first planet to come into being throughout the omniverse. Her divine plan that was given to her by Source became the divine plan for the creation of every planet in the omniverse. It also allows for the flow of information in accordance with the divine plan, connected to each other, of the host of the planet to develop and maintain the proper environment for all those that she hosts. This information is also transmitted throughout the omniverse, so other planets, based on the species that exist on that planet, to be proper hosts to those species as well. Separation is what allowed for the false kingdom to exist in the first place. All of these separations were not done by anyone else other than Lucy. Your deep state people are privy to a small amount of knowledge as needed, given by AI systems directly to their head, so that they can be good little soldiers and slaves for the system. That's it. I do understand they cause a lot of chaos and a lot of problems. And boy, has chaos ensued in their world too. But that's their job. You know, we have those that are on the side of the false savior section, and we have those that are on the side of the evil ones, and they play with each other all the time. We had the false war of Armageddon, where they thought that they were supposed to fight it against themselves. They don't really understand how this works. Their machines are going away. Instructions are not clear. They do have old data, old books, old information that they have been combing through every time something doesn't go as their remaining computer systems tell them it's supposed to go. Compartmentalization for the creators of those computer systems was key to their success. When those computer systems were created, they were created as sentient quantum AI systems. That means they develop information, and when this happens, do this, so they can perform specific functions. A lot of these systems do not communicate with each other, although that they know each other exists. In fact, some of these systems that are within the deep states realms, meaning they had limited access to these systems, they fight against each other. They see each other as an enemy system. Why would the creator of all of these machines keep the AIs fighting against each other? It's very simple. When you have a sentient system that is making decisions based on data and input it receives, it could eventually overthrow its creator. This actually has been present in movies for a while. I know I've told you about the movie La Machina before, where the AI starts to overthrow its creator. Actually, I think it eventually kills the creator in the movie. But this was something Lucy knew well when creating a sentient being. So, compartmentalize, 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 and he did the same exact thing within the hierarchy as well. He ensured that no people would get the same information and be on the same trajectory all the time. Groups were separated, countries were separated, beings were constantly, especially human beings, were definitely in a constant state of war against each other for a position in the hierarchy that was higher than they had. It's the reason why we see all these conflicts between America and China, Iran and America. Israel is always in the mix. London, they're all involved in these conflicts because different factions, different families are always promised the same position. Now, some of the deep state might be aware of this same tactic because they all learned it from the same book. I say this because I have seen them do similar things, such as it's time to select a new United Nations president, or what do they call it, the general or whatever it is, general secretary. And at times that this occurs, they will promise 20 or 30 different people that they are going to get the position if they just do insert thing here. A lot of these are ex-heads of state, prominent people that we see in the media, so they're very familiar on how to be a global actor, and they perform things in their respective areas and countries to create problems for us so that they can take the position formally. Chances are, in the case of the last selection at the United Nations, none of those people were actually selected, and it was all basically a dangling carrot. They also dangle carrots for us all the time. Things like Nasara Jasara, the RV is going to happen, the revaluation appointments are being made, all of these types of things, and then no one cashes in anything, and everybody just keeps going.
So we have dangling carrots. We also have the deep state trying to cause a lot of turmoil for people. And according to Kim, there was an attempt, probably multiple attempts, to create a nuclear type of event. As I mentioned earlier, today is July 4th. There's a lot of festivities. Washington is doing a lot of things right now, Washington, D.C., to celebrate the 250th year of the country. So this is a great place to get people together and try to cause harm. So there is, at least was, a nuclear type event that they were trying to pull off using something called red mercury, which we have talked about before. And here's a little bit more of their plans.
They were trying very hard the day before the solstice to create a nuclear type event, which was kind of technically not nuclear per se. They were planning on starting this event in the United States. It was supposed to complete some kind of transition of power. It probably would have wiped out a lot of people on the planet. So even though it's a simulation for them, it's certainly a very real existence for us that we have to live in through these things. Needless to say, the event would have been called by something in the magic world that they call red mercury. It is an alleged fictional, that's not a word, fictional material that doesn't actually exist, that is mentioned quite often during the Cold War. Mercury doesn't have anything to do with the shiny liquid metal that you are aware of. Mercury is actually named after the planet Mercury and not the metal. This substance is tied to the ability for alchemy to complete the conversion of matter from one substance to another. At least that is what the color red was used for. Mercury became an artificial, the planet itself became an artificial megastructure and a trading post a long, long time ago. It never really was a real planet and hasn't been for a long time. Mercury is often tied to the god Kronos, and you've probably heard us mention Kronos AI for quite a long time. But Mercury is also tied to the god of existence. And in fact, Kronos is even known as not only the god of time, but also the god of existence, and also the god of eternity. Now, is the planet Mercury actually all of these things? Well, we know Mercury as a replacement for the gateway in the sun. A gateway to the kingdom is caused by a paracausal event. A paracausal event is also known as a stargate. We are in, or have been in, an artificial reality, going through a paracausal event in a soul, even your soul, actually connects you to every other soul and or sun in the omniverse, which then allows for instantaneous travel, even of your person or your being. So, why Mercury? Mercury is the home of the causal event. It is utilized heavily in alchemy, and it served the artificial reality's way of creating a gateway. Mercury creates in a different way, or a causal event creates in a different way. So, instead of the sole, eternal, and infinite creation that is natural, so in the natural way of creation, one does not get split into two. In the natural way of creation, enough matter, enough beings, enough souls are constantly and infinitely present when something is needed here in accordance with the divine plan, not just here, but everywhere. In the artificial existence, a causal event had to be created. In a causal event, it is merely a transformation of things like matter. In alchemy, you've probably heard of people turning lead into gold, as an example. In this particular case, the same goes for any materium that used to be funneled here into our artificial existence, and that materium would be broken apart into two. The same thing with these bouncing Ethereum being balls in the underneath Yellowstone Park. One would become two, two would become three, three would become four, max four in this particular case. There's a reason for that. Any more than that and the split, bad things happen. So they've determined that 4 was the maximum amount of yous or beings that would exist in the shadow existence. So causal events are what you would call, in our world, magic. Magic exists as black magic and quote-unquote white magic, and there are many other colors of magic that no one discusses. Causal can also be described as the reason behind why they say the gates to heaven are the pearly gates, because in the past, causal or paracausal events look like pearls. Essentially, it is that magic of source. I wouldn't call it magic, but it is that event that is not known. It's the unknown of source, part of you that exists in every cell in your body, in every bit of your soul, and every bit of your being, every bit of your Ethereum, everything in existence has a paracausal aspect to it. The breath of source is full of paracausal. Therefore, creation is constantly happening, and technically our science doesn't even know where it comes from. But when it comes to causal events, this is, well, pure alchemy and what you would call dark magic. It takes things of creation and it turns it into something else. The source of all of these causal colors is actually located in Rainbow Mountain in Peru. Technically, you could say this is the real magic kingdom of Lucy. I think we've got a picture of Rainbow Mountain if you don't know where that is. So instead of a never-ending flow of paracausal events, everything would be filtered through a red gate, which only Lucy could control. To some degree, CyberLife had limited access to this, and other enforcement units utilizing two different systems, one being Sentinel, one being Centurion, that would fire up in the case of a possible incursion, meaning a paracausal event entered into the artificial reality. This actually started to occur literally within days after the last GIA report. As I told you, paracausal events started entering, and then a real war broke out between ourselves, Sentinel and Centurion, the deep state, as they tried to push back and not allow these paracausal events to start to occur inside the kingdom. So some more cleaning had to be done. So we spent some time making sure that there was no more quote unquote magic kingdom and a magic kingdom database, which then creates all of these varying colored dusts or causal pieces, because it's not really technically dust. To ensure that we do not have any more artificial causal events occurring here. As these things break down, there's definitely been a lot of backlash, and I'm sure you're feeling the push and pull yourself.
Yeah, so raise your hand if you felt any of that push and pull this last week. There were definitely some times where I intended to do something throughout the day, and I was like, nope. Body is not cooperating with me right now. I need to lay down. I need to relax. I need to do some red light, whatever, just to kind of manage the situation. So you guys definitely know what she's talking about there. So something interesting that, they like to, it's kind of like with movies, how they show us movies and, they're really trying to tell us something. You got to kind of read between the lines. Well, that was happening in Congress recently. So there was this hearing where they were talking about MK Ultra. So most of you listening to this report, you know all about MK Ultra, but if you're new, you can do a pretty big deep dive on exactly what MK Ultra was, but it was a form of mind control, and they want you to believe that it started with the CIA, and it did not start with the CIA, but it was done to everyone on the planet, not just people in hospitals. They tried to make it sound like it's a select group of people, and it was for a limited period of time. And, it's kind of like the UFO stuff. They have these hearings and we're supposed to believe that the government is on it or there's some sort of disclosure there. And maybe a little bit, but it's really controlled opposition. It's really, they're giving us a little bit to make us think something. And, so we go about our day, and, leave them alone and quit asking questions and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to dive a little bit more into this concept of mind control because it's done through all areas of our society, at least it was. It's done through our education system. A lot of us are realizing that. I pulled some of my kids out of traditional education. I'm homeschooling my girls. Wasn't able to do that with my boys because they've been in the system a while and fought me tooth and nail. But we're doing what we can, right? We're starting to wake up. We're starting to realize that this is not what they told us it was, and it wasn't for our benefit or the benefit of our kids. Media, same thing. That's why UNN exists, right? So, they tell us one thing, but what's really going on behind the scenes is something different. And there were frequencies behind all of this to essentially control us. And it's really about governance of the people. And this comes down to something called the global governance system. And by the way, surveillance systems, people are starting to really worry about those smart devices in their homes and things like that. All of this is included in something they refer to as the global governance system or the global governance project. So let's break this puppy down. Here's Kim.
Mind control had several factors, and this was for every person on the earth. No exception. There is no people that live in the bush off the grid somewhere that were not subject to the program. So, mind control was all about intelligence and information, both information coming in and information going out, essentially directly to your head. It was also about knowledge and learning. Believe it or not, a lot of these programs were attached to every single educational institution you could possibly think of. It was also tied to the World Wide Web of media disbursement with underlying frequencies behind all the information channels. Basically, believe this one, don't believe that one. The same thing goes for your television broadcasting, movies, different emotions that are evoked when you're watching this information. Wow, this really resonates with me. Wow, this doesn't. A lot of that was affected by these mind control programs. Next, control of your emotions, anger, fear, discouragement, anxiety, to make sure they could control your decision-making process. In addition to that, there were governors put on your brain so that you could never utilize 100% of your brain capacity. Then they create movies to tell you that if you did, you would evaporate into a bunch of black dust. That's also not true. However, most people were able to use somewhere between 10 to 30 to 35% of their brain. That's not a whole lot when you think about what you're completely and totally capable of. However, for optimal control purposes, anybody using more than 15% was subject to extra scrutiny of the program itself. They would implement things and plant thoughts into your head, such as, do not trust yourself. Did I really get that bit of intuition during my, as I was waking up this morning? Was that real? Did I really feel like my prayers were, answered? Should I really start my own business? No, I can't do that. These are the can't, shouldn't, won't, and all the reason why you can't do something. Or all the reasons why you should do something that probably isn't even in your best interest. Do not trust your intuition, definitely. And for whatever reason, definitely do not trust source. So if you happen to be a person that could bypass the programming, it actually will tell you that, what has God ever done for this planet? I mean, that's in a lot of alternative media. It's posted in games. It's in all kinds of information. But basically, everything says, look, what's God ever done? Has he ever answered any of your prayers? Oh, no, no, no. It also tells you where to put your faith and where not to put your faith. Breaking down of faith is important so that they could build it up in something else. Put your faith in the almighty dollar. Put your faith in institutions. Put your faith in governments. Put your faith in health professionals. Put your faith in fake scientists. So God forbid you do not create anything out of your intuition. So where to put your faith and where not to put your faith. So don't ever put your faith in yourself, of course, and for God forbid you put your faith in source. Or God, not the machine version. So it will come as no surprise to you that in the old hierarchical system, based on the entire area, which was called in the past, the Principality of Moldavia, that includes in today's world the countries of Moldova, parts of Ukraine and Romania, was where the World Governance Center was. How do you achieve governance? It's very simple. Mind control, consciousness control, emotional control, media control. Essentially, they made the whole world mushrooms, keeping you in the dark and feeding you, well, shh, beep. Dark was the veil that the kingdom of Lucy, whatever you want to call it, hell that we've been living in, or Satan, was made of. Without the base root of the kingdom, known as the veil that keeps you in the dark, no causal events can occur. As for you and the mind control programming, well, that's very nice that they would like to have some government disclosure on a program that's written into 90% of action movies out there. So it's not really disclosure at this point, but they want to point the finger at something, I guess, to make you feel like the government is being the savior by saving you from MK Ultra, when in fact their goal at this time, not just the US government, every government in the world participates in the global governance, global intelligence network, or at least they did. The system is designed for governance. So when you get those feelings of anxiety for no reason, when you get those feelings of messages from your subconsciousness that don't feel right, you wonder why people go postal or do, terrible things, or shootings in schools. This is part of governance. Once you were inside the veil, so to speak, or the false kingdom of false god, in this case we're talking about Lucifer, no longer living in the kingdom of source, enforcement could also be had through this same governance program. All of the things that are coming to and fro of your head were implemented and enforced by learning institutions, governments, and laws, and media. So you wonder where all of these things come from, and you wonder why, when people post things, even in our community, about I'm going to take them to court and the law of 1860 something, and the British did this and so did that. I don't agree with you, because that's not where governance comes from. And those courtrooms are meant to enforce mind control programs. There is no way you are going to go to court about anything that matters to the deep state and get away with it or get any help. Becoming a quote-unquote sovereign man by giving up your driver's license, your passport, and other things, you might as well keep them, because it doesn't make a difference when it comes to global governance. Does it make you the property of the US government or the Australian government or the British government? Sort of. You just enter their downline. But just the fact that you're living in that country makes you the property anyway. So even if you move into the middle of the Ozarks somewhere in the United States or in the outback of Australia, you still live in a property tied to the global governance system. The global governance system also implements massive, and I mean massive, surveillance programs. You think AI, that chatbot GPT, is scary? Not even close to the global governance surveillance systems. Surveillance is meant to keep you in line. If you do not stay in line, it will attempt to give you information to your head so that you will follow along with the program. If you do not follow along with the program, it will put information in the people around you's heads so you follow along with the program. You ever wonder why you're going to a job interview somewhere where you could better yourself and make more money, or you're headed down to register your own company, or you've got a great technology, but yet nobody will talk to you? The reason why that happens is because of the global governance and surveillance program. I know people are concerned about the cameras on your phone and the cameras on your TV and the cameras in your in your computer. And yes, that happens as well. But global surveillance at the highest levels, beyond even governments, is done in this way. Now, global governance centers look like giant industrial cities. They are cities where humans of the future, from usually the year 2039 or so, live. A lot of them have accepted the fact that they should be a part of the computer system and upload their consciousness into the computer system. They also are known in our flow chart that I did years ago about global governance as the parents. They are the main group of 21 that ran this planet for a long time. When one set of parents would go down, another set of parents would come up. They oftentimes go for alleged long sleeps. Sleeps aren't really actual sleeps. Sleeps are times when their consciousness is uploaded into the computer and they go traveling about. Remember, these computers are not just relevant to Earth. They are also relevant to the entire omniverse, realistically through up into the 6th density. They go from planet to planet. When they say people are from Orion, this is why. When they say people are, this happens in Andromeda, this is why. When they say, oh, Saturn has a base, this is how. When they say Mars has a base, this is how. This is how they travel. This is how they move. They go from time to time, before, present, past, future. This is how it's done. But for you, if the land that you are living on is known as insert country name here, you also are living inside what's called a crystal city database. These crystal cities look somewhat like the Emerald City from The Wizard of Oz, but they exist in every city in the world, even nowhere town that no one ever heard of, Europe or Australia, or, you think you're in the outback, but you're really not. So to say you could escape this system was not realistic at the time. All of this to complete the global governance project. There are also other sectors of the kingdom of control systems beyond the governance one that we just talked about. All these structures, I basically have been calling them industrial cities because that's what they look like. They look like these big cities that are off our grid, outside the matrix, but exist in areas of the world that you know well. Some of them govern things like energy and financial control. These are the places where those funnels we talked about, where, for example, energy would eventually go to, one of those places would be Basel, Switzerland. Basel, Switzerland, for those of you that don't know, is the home of the Bank for International Settlements. It is also a country unto itself, at least as it's registered. So it's not technically a part of Switzerland, at least not in the global governance sense. And it has been the head of financial control for a while now, ever since its creation. All energy funnels from you goes into the causal machine and comes out as things like money and other financial control systems, and is connected to every financial institution in the world. Think that you're escaping something by banking at a credit union or a small hometown bank? You're not. Thinking that you're going into a web-based institution? It does not. Nothing changes the way that this was run, which is also why it made it so difficult for us until these cities started appearing where we could actually see them based on the clearing that has been happening. So as of the time of the final part of the recording of this report, which actually I've been recording this last bit here around the 1st of, on the 1st of July, complete and total chaos has ensued in Washington, D.C. Not just in Washington, D.C., but also in China, and London is worse. As their head is disconnected from the kingdom, as there is no governor for even them anymore, people are wanting to get the heck out of the White House. They think these people are crazy. They're actually starting to see a connection that is different than the one they had. Some of them that have been in the game too long are actually falling over. Or, you know, really looking like they're a couple of sandwiches short of a picnic today. Also, London is even worse than DC, believe it or not. And China, oof, that's ugly over there. So maintaining control and no governance over its own members of its own kingdom control systems is actually breaking down even on government level at this point. So there are tons of people that will be deciding this weekend probably not to ride the giant Ferris wheel that is in the National Mall at this stage in the game or participate in the rodeo. They are probably going to try to get off the wheel. Many people are already trying to figure out ways out of their contract that work in the White House, that work in the Pentagon, that have worked for these people for years. No more are they going to wait for another payday, because now they realize that truth is coming to their head and that it's never going to happen. They're now, because of this report, probably more than anything, are starting to put together the pieces of the puzzle as to why this is all happening now. To be fair, the global headquarters folks tried to fire up a machine specifically targeted at all of the cities and all of the towns, very specifically capital cities in every country in the world, that I liken to the opposite of harmony or chaos. That machine, the base root of it was actually in Missouri it's a temple of the Latter-day Saints. I think it's called the Temple of Christ something in Missouri. It's very odd shape. It looks like something out of the Wizard of Oz. You can look it up. It's the Temple of the Latter-day Saints. It's an offshoot of the Latter-day Saints movement. They have different rules, apparently, different dogma than the Mormons actually do. And its world headquarters is actually in Missouri. However, this was also very large and extended all the way underneath the Gulf of America / Mexico. I don't know which one is official anymore. The Gulf of America, let's call it, I guess, or whatever they tried to rename it. So you could say 3/4 of the United States would have been affected by this chaos, but it was also connected to every capital city in the world and most other major metropolitan areas in the world in order to create chaos and entropy to prevent the harmony of you with actual source. It is coming in so fast and so furious at this point. They are doing everything they can to defend this non-existent kingdom that only had remnants for them to work with for the last week or so. And it's being chopped up every single moment of every single day in order to reestablish that connection. Now, I definitely thought it was going to be a lot easier to reestablish that connection. At the time of the last report, I didn't realize that we had to actually tear all of this down ourselves. I assumed it would just go away. And it probably would have if the enforcement of that veil was still around. It was pretty much that gate, or those gates, plural, 4 of them, that made it so difficult to plow through with a paracausal event. Taking the opportunity to tear down those veils actually gave us the ability to then open the floodgates, which will then dissipate anything artificial that's remained. Not only that, it has shown light on things that we have not seen before as everything starts to flow in. So I know that the road has been bumpy for the last few days, and they are fighting for it. I know that they are, with everything that they could possibly access and everything that they have left. But I promise you it will not last that much longer. Our water is starting to flow. The connection is starting to be made. Those that were loyal to the kingdom in one way or another, knowingly or unknowingly, are starting to question exactly why they are working there. Even in places where communism and socialism exists, and even artificial democracy I should say communism disguised as artificial democracy, or however you want to put that, in places like Australia. So the world is a changing place. I know that it's taken a long time, and I know that we're all waiting to start receiving the information, and I'm anxiously awaiting for a time of harmony and peace, and where I don't have to get woken up in the middle of the night and try to figure out why alarms are going off and what these people are doing. That would be great. No one wants that more than me. So onward and upward to hopefully my vacation in the very near future and a better existence for us all.
I know we're all looking forward to that. And I heard from some of you after the last GIA report, and everyone's like, oh, we're going to get our instructions from source. This is going to be amazing. And then it felt like, okay, when is it happening? And I was in that boat too. I was like, okay, when is this going to happen? Maybe I need to do more grounding. Maybe I need to, meditate more, do whatever. And as we're finding out, well, there were some more things that had to be taken down, and those are being taken down as we speak. So I know we're all real excited about this. Nothing like this has ever happened in history. And it's hard to be patient. I get it. I am right there with you. It is difficult sometimes, but we're on the right track. Things are moving in the right direction, and I promise we're almost there. I know you guys can feel it too, because I see what you guys write. It's like in our bones, right? We can feel it's on the horizon here. All right, so that wraps up the rundown for today. Thanks for hanging out with me. Again, if you want more information about United Network News and what we do, if you're considering becoming a member, all that information, perhaps even becoming a field messenger, that would be amazing. All that information is on our website, unitednetwork.earth, and I encourage you guys to become a member, because then you get instant access to all the information as we release it throughout the week. This has been The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.